The fluorescent lights of the upscale shopping mall buzzed overhead as Marcus wiped down the marble floors, his weathered hands moving in practiced circular motions. At 42, he'd grown accustomed to the way people looked through him, or worse, at him with thinly veiled contempt. His Navy janitor's uniform was clean but worn, his name tag slightly crooked. What they didn't see was the man who woke at 5 every morning to pack his daughter's lunch with care, who helped her with homework until midnight, who chose between buying her new shoes and fixing their apartment's leaky faucet. What they couldn't know was that every swipe of his mop was an act of love for the 8-year-old girl who called him her hero. That Tuesday afternoon started like any other until Marcus's world tilted on its axis in the span of 60 seconds. He'd been cleaning near the food court when he heard his daughter's voice, small, frightened, calling for him. His head snapped up to see Emma standing near the fountain, her school backpack hanging from one shoulder, tears streaming down her flushed cheeks. His supervisor had grudgingly allowed her to wait for him there after school since their neighbor who usually watched her had fallen ill. Marcus dropped his mop and rushed toward her, his heart hammering. "Baby, what's wrong?" Before Emma could answer, a sharp voice cut through the ambient noise of the mall. "Excuse me, could you not bring your situation here?" A woman in designer clothes stood with her arms crossed, her lip curled in disgust. "This is a family shopping center, not a daycare for the help." Marcus felt his face burn, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm sorry, ma'am. My daughter just—" "I don't care about your excuses," the woman interrupted, her voice rising. "It's bad enough we have to watch you people push mops around while we're trying to enjoy our day. Now you're bringing crying children into it." A crowd began to form, phones emerging from pockets and purses. Marcus recognized the particular hell that was about to unfold, the kind that went viral, that reduced a person's entire existence to a 30-second clip of shame. Another voice joined in, a man in an expensive suit. "She's right. If you can't afford proper childcare, maybe you shouldn't have had kids. Some of us work hard for our money and don't want to be confronted with poverty while we shop." The words landed like physical blows. Marcus instinctively pulled Emma close, feeling her small body trembling against his. He wanted to defend himself, to tell them about his wife who died 3 years ago from cancer they couldn't afford to treat properly, about the engineering degree he'd never finished because he'd had to drop out to support his new family, about the 60-hour weeks he worked between 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. But the words stuck in his throat, pride and shame warring in his chest. "How dare you?" The voice was quiet but commanding, cutting through the murmurs of the gathering crowd like a knife through silk. Everyone turned to see a young woman in simple jeans and a white blouse stepping forward. She looked to be in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that blazed with an intensity that made even the suited man take a step back. "How dare you speak to another human being that way?" she continued, her voice gaining strength. She moved to stand beside Marcus and Emma, creating a protective barrier with her body. "This man is working an honest job to support his daughter. What exactly are you contributing to the world besides cruelty?" The woman in designer clothes scoffed. "Oh, please, another bleeding heart. Do you have any idea who I am? My husband is—" "I don't care if your husband is the president," the young woman interrupted. "You're a bully, and bullies are cowards, no matter how much money they have." Marcus stared at his unexpected defender, stunned into silence. He noticed details now. The way her clothes, though simple, were impeccably made, the watch on her wrist that cost more than his annual salary, the quiet confidence that came from never having to prove yourself. The suited man laughed derisively. "And who are you supposed to be? His girlfriend?" The young woman's expression didn't change. "My name is Catherine Hartwell. And yes, I know exactly who I am." The effect was instantaneous. The color drained from both bullies' faces. Even Marcus, who didn't follow high society news, recognized the name. Hartwell Industries was one of the largest conglomerates in the country. The Hartwell family wealth was legendary, and Catherine Hartwell was the sole heir, known not just for her fortune but for her ruthless business acumen and her habit of personally reviewing every aspect of her company's operations. Catherine pulled out her phone with deliberate slowness. "Now, let me see. This mall is owned by Meridian Properties, which my family acquired last year. And according to my records, the management contract is up for renewal next month." She looked up, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. I'm thinking we need management that better reflects our values. Kindness, respect, humanity. The crowd had gone completely silent. Phones that had been recording the confrontation were slowly being lowered. Catherine turned to Marcus, her expression softening. I'm sorry you had to experience that. Would you and your daughter join me for coffee? I'd like to hear your story, if you're willing to share it. Marcus found his voice, though it came out rougher than intended. I have to finish my shift. Consider it handled. Catherine made a brief call, and within minutes, Marcus's supervisor appeared, practically tripping over himself to grant Marcus the rest of the day off with pay. They sat in a quiet corner of an upscale cafe outside the mall, Emma between them, shyly sipping hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. Catherine listened as Marcus talked. Really talked, for the first time in years. He told her about Sarah, his wife, about the medical bills that had buried them, about dropping out of school, about Emma's dreams of becoming a teacher. I'm not ashamed of my work, Marcus said finally. It's honest, and it provides for my daughter. But sometimes it feels like the world wants me to be ashamed. Like they need me to be small so they can feel big. Catherine nodded slowly. I understand more than you might think. People see the name and the money, but they don't see the person. They either want something from you or resent you for having it. She smiled at Emma, who was watching her with wide eyes. But every now and then, you meet someone who reminds you what actually matters. What Marcus didn't know, what Catherine didn't tell him that day, was that she'd been in that mall for a reason. She'd made it a practice to occasionally visit her family's properties unannounced, in ordinary clothes, to see how employees were treated and how customers behaved when they thought no one important was watching. She'd been about to leave when she'd witnessed the confrontation. Over the following weeks, Catherine's actions spoke louder than her words that day. She established a scholarship fund for employees and their families, with Marcus as the first recipient to complete his engineering degree. She implemented new policies across all Hartwell properties ensuring fair wages, benefits, and respect for all workers. And she offered Marcus a position in her company's facilities management program, not charity, but genuine opportunity. Based on his years of experience and untapped potential, the video of the confrontation did go viral, but not in the way Marcus had feared. It became a story about standing up for others, about seeing people's humanity regardless of their circumstances. The two original bullies became cautionary tales, their names synonymous with entitled cruelty. A year later, Marcus walked across a stage to receive his degree, Emma cheering louder than anyone in the audience. Catherine was there too, applauding from the front row. He'd tried to thank her countless times, but she always deflected, insisting he'd earned everything himself. But on that graduation day, she pulled him aside. You know what you taught me, she said quietly. That dignity isn't about what you do or how much you earn. It's about how you show up for the people you love, even when the world tries to make you feel invisible. You were never invisible, Marcus. You were just surrounded by people who'd forgotten how to really see. Marcus smiled, tears in his eyes. And you reminded me that there are still people who choose kindness when cruelty would be easier. As he watched Emma run toward him, her face bright with pride and joy, Marcus realized that the worst moment of his life had led to its redemption. Not because a billionaire had saved him, but because a fellow human being had stood beside him when it mattered most, refusing to let shame and cruelty have the final word. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply refuse to look away from someone else's pain. Sometimes standing beside someone is enough to change everything.